Welcome to TankSpot's Razer hardware review. My name's Ciderhelm, I'm the administrator of TankSpot.com. Before jumping into the products, let me cover the fundamental approach I'm taking with this review. First, this is a review of Razer products in particular. This is not a review of all gaming hardware on the market. Second, with the exception of the keyboard and headset, which were sent to me specifically for review, I own and have purchased all of the hardware I will reference during this review, including non-Razer products. Third, this is not a paid review. If you've listened to our hardware podcast from last year, or have seen my comments on products such as the Razer Lycosa, or more recently the Deathadder, you know that I'm a fan of Razer products already. With only one exception, I prefer Razer products over the alternatives I'll be presenting. The first product I'd like to review is the Deathadder. This is a professional gaming mouse with a wired connection. Razer also produces two other higher-end mice, the Lycosa and the Mako. I purchased the Deathadder several months ago after my Microsoft Habu's mouse wheel stopped functioning. For full disclosure, the Microsoft Habu is a Razer-powered product, as is the Microsoft Lycosa and the N52 TE Belkin keypad. The Deathadder has two mouse buttons on the left side that are very easily accessible, making this a 7-function mouse. It is a highly ergonomic mouse with a single molded plate covering the entire surface. The Razer symbol in the middle of it slowly pulses blue, which was a neat surprise when I first used it. The Deathadder is one of the few pieces of hardware that I haven't found complaint with. The response time and movement is exactly where I want it for World of Warcraft, and it's certainly been good in other games I've played. With MMO gaming, though, I've often found myself searching for more buttons in more places, which led me to try two other major releases in the last few months. These were the Logitech G9 and the SteelSeries MMO mouse. The Logitech G9 offered more buttons and a generally very solid, if not ergonomic, design. However, the additional buttons were not easy to get instant access to, and I found myself binding keys to them that functioned just as well on my keyboard. The main issue with the SteelSeries MMO mouse, as I made clear on the TankSpot forums, was a horribly handled release. There were too few products on the market, and SteelSeries appeared to be blaming their customers for the lack of supply. The amount of negative feedback SteelSeries has received, I'm going to assume they'll be handling it better in the future. The SteelSeries MMO mouse received coverage directly from Blizzard. In theory, the 15-button mouse would have been an amazing addition to World of Warcraft players, who generally need access to a lot more keys than FPS gamers do. The great software package that came with the MMO mouse was also attractive. Unfortunately, the SteelSeries MMO mouse suffers from keys that are packed too closely together and a complete lack of ergonomic design. Specifically, the left side of the mouse features a 4-way directional pad and two additional mouse buttons directly above it. Whenever I was trying to quickly use abilities bound to any of those keys, I would often find myself hitting a combination of 2 or 3 of them at the same time because of the proximity of the D-pad to the two buttons. Among the Logitech G9, the SteelSeries MMO mouse, and the Razer Deathadder, I quickly found myself back in familiar territory with the Deathadder. It's simply too comfortable to give up. The most likely upgrade from here will be the Mako, and I'll be sure to share my thoughts on this in the related forum post when I make that purchase. The next product I want to cover is the Lycosa. In particular, the model I own is the Lycosa Mirrored Edition, which features a very sleek finish. As with the Deathadder, this is not the top Razer product in its class, instead deferring that title to the Razer Tarantula gaming keyboard. I've owned 3 gaming keyboards, the Microsoft Lycosa, the Logitech G15, and the Razer Lycosa. The Microsoft Lycosa was a solid product and has had no issues to date. It used 2 knobs and a few additional buttons for media control, which I found enormously helpful and addicting. The keyboard itself was bulkier than it probably ought to have been, but overall it was very solid for the year I used it. The Logitech G15 was both very good and very frustrating. In the product I purchased, the media keys for moving back and forth through my Zune player were partially fused to the keyboard, making them very difficult to press in. From my understanding, this is not how they're intended to be produced, so I'll pass this off as a bad apple. The G15 also had an LCD display specifically for World of Warcraft, which was unfortunately not designed for Wrath of the Lich King. More specifically, the display was designed for 3-digit stats, and the 4-digit stats of Wrath ran directly into the other stat listings, causing these to become unreadable at a glance. Aside from these issues, the G15 is a quality keyboard with well-built keys. The Razer Lycosa has a few perks. The first and most outstanding feature is the media touchpad in the upper right corner of the keyboard. This has flawless response and makes it extremely easy to use volume controls and media applications with quick touches. The second feature is a much lower depth to the keys than the other keyboards I've used. This is helpful in that it creates less stress when rapidly using abilities. If you're used to the low depth of laptop keyboards, this will work well for you. There's one major drawback to the mirrored edition that is specific only to this edition. Mirrored means you literally see your reflection when you're looking at it. It's that sleek. When I started using this keyboard, I thought I had clean hands and I thought I did a good job washing up after a meal. I was wrong. The rest makes that abundantly clear. My personal recommendation is that people purchasing this keyboard purchase the normal Lycosa, which has all of the same features, costs the same amount, but doesn't have this finish. Only purchase the mirrored edition if you're showing off to other people. Before moving to the audio products, I'm going to briefly mention the Destructar mousepad. Prior to this mousepad, I was having problems with my laser mouse tracking on a smooth black desk. This solved that problem without taking too much desk space or looking out of place on the desk. It also has a very low profile. The first audio product I'm going to cover is the Carcharias. As with the previous products, this is not the best Razer has to offer, an honor which belongs both to the Barracuda and the Megalodon. I own both the Creative Fatality headset and the Razer Carcharias headset. Both headsets have amazing sound quality and clarity. In addition, both headsets are well designed, with an edge for comfort going to the Razer Carcharias. The difference between these two products comes for those who are seeking to do audio recording. The Carcharias picks up most sound with clarity. The Creative Fatality filters out noise exceptionally well, often leaving only the voice of the speaker. Depending on what you're seeking, you'll need to make the decision between the two. However, for full disclosure, I am continuing to use the Creative Fatality headset for voice recording. Finally, I'd like to cover the Razer Mako. This is one of my larger purchases for my production computer, and it's one of the purchases I've been most satisfied with. I actually went out and bought this after I was sent the keyboard and headset for review because I was impressed with the quality of the collection. This is not a surround sound system. That was the biggest concern I had with purchasing it, as the price tag didn't seem to warrant a stereo system. Fortunately, the reviews for the product had been so outstanding that it got me to reevaluate how I actually listen to sound. It turned out I wasn't actually taking advantage of my surround sound system in most places anyway. One of the Newegg comments referred to the sound clarity, especially with bass, which had been a concern of a premium Logitech surround sound system I had purchased shortly after I left the service. The Mako is just 3 units, 2 speakers and a subwoofer. These units can be easily placed around the computer and their connections were simple and obvious to set up. I have 2 very minor complaints with the Mako, and let me emphasize these are minor, but for this to be an honest review I need to share these. The first issue is with the control dial. This is a slick component which I have near my keyboard and mouse, and it allows easy control of the volume, the bass, and the incoming connections. It also has a volume slider. The volume slider has had severe touch recognition issues when I use it, often taking several touches to get near where I want it to be. Again, I use my keyboard for most volume control, so setting this once is enough for long-term use. The second issue I've had is the lack of an optical audio connection. While this is by no means necessary for quality sound, this may be something to keep in mind when you're making the purchase. The reason this concerned me is because I normally use 2 separate hardware devices on my motherboard to produce sound, which allowed me to deliver my game and media sound to my speakers while keeping my guildmates' voices and Ventrilo in my headset. With the Mako installed to the same piece of hardware and without the room to put in a new card into my multi-GPU computer, I had to purchase a Creative X-Fi USB card to make use of this. Again, let me emphasize that the Mako sound quality is superb. This may be the best gaming sound system on the market, and if you don't absolutely need surround sound, you should learn more about this system. Thanks for listening. Again, this was not a paid review. I'd invite you to learn more about these products at www.razerzone.com.